I am split. I'm so incredibly split, you guys, it's not even funny anymore. Because today, I want to talk with you about live service games, which is a type of game that you either hear of every single day, or you've never heard of at all. Game studios, however, absolutely love this type of game, as they're just pumping it out all the time right now. Just this month, we saw the popular releases of Zenless Zone Zero, The First Descendant, and Once Human. Every single one of these games being a live service. But it's not just the game studios that like them. Let us go and play a little game that I'd like to call Find the Live Service. Right here, we're on Twitch. Very surprising, I know. But we're here on Twitch to look at the most popular categories that are being streamed right now, and I want to see how many of these most popular categories are in fact live services. So we're going to start out right here. Just chatting is just, you know, a whole bunch of people talking and doing some weird shit. Valorant, live service. GTA 5, single player game with the most popular element being live service. League, live service. This, live service. Fortnite, live service. That's just gambling. Live service, live service, live service, live service, live service, fucking good game. Live service, live service, live service, live service, live service, live service, gambling, live service. Have you ever said a word so many times that's kind of lost all meaning? Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. So what are these live service games anyway? Why are these games so beloved to the point that people, like me, will spend their entire lives just dedicated to one? And also, why are these games so disliked that people, like me, think they're not worth a single shred of our time? See, I told you I'm split on this. To get to the bottom of all of this, we need to go back in time to properly understand why this multiplayer shooter game is not a live service, whereas this multiplayer shooter game is a live service, but this multiplayer shooter game is also a live service, even though it has the same name as this multiplayer shooter game, which, remember, was not a live service. Don't worry, it will make sense soon. Originally, when you bought a game, you either got it physically on a cartridge or physically on a disc. This meant that the game that you had access to was the game as it was written by the people who made it. So every single little feature, balance, and also bugs that were in the game when it was shipped would forever be in your game. However, then came this thing called the internet, which brought with it a lot of possibilities. What if you could play games against people that weren't just in the same room as you, but were all across the world? Thus, online multiplayer was born. And hey, what if we already have this feature where we can send data to and from the game via the internet? What if we take this base game and then add on some little extras that people can buy and then download later on? And thus, downloadable content, or DLC, was introduced. Let's say that you made a game that people really liked. What would be the best way for you to profit off of this one single game? I mean, it would be very unlikely that people would like the game so much that they would buy 2 copies of the exact same game. Like, seriously, what would be the point of that? The most common tactic of dealing with a successful game was to take that successful game and then make a follow-up to it, in the hopes that people would like the success of the first game and then buy the next one. However, there was a bit of a problem. This game being good would never guarantee that this game would also be good. But what if, instead of just hoping that the next game would be good, what if you could take the base game and just make it longer? This was the idea behind downloadable content. Basically, you would take the base game, and if it would do alright, you would release like extra map packs, extra game modes, extra things that people could download and add to the game for a fraction of the price to make it even better. While downloadable content was definitely used on these games, at the same time they also just continued to make more entries in the series, because let's face it, even a masterpiece like Modern Warfare 2 would never really have more than 1,200 players play the game 7 years after launch. So investing everything in one single good game would just be suicide. Like, you can't do that. You can't expect people to 7 years after launch still be playing the same game and have those people be about 2 million players every single day. Oh wait, you can? Well, what are we waiting on? For game studios, this was an absolute no-brainer. Like, you could just take one successful game, and no longer did you have to make a questionable sequel. You could just keep on developing on that one game and have it be successful. And in the same vein, as a player, I remember I loved this idea. My very first live service game that I got in contact with was a game called Warframe, which started out as this kind of like dark, simple game where you were just running around as a mysterious space ninja, and then slowly evolved into this game where you could actually start to impact the balance of the actual universe by choosing which side you wanted to support. And then just a few years later, you would have this massive cinematic story that would introduce a new side of yourself that would give you heaps of questions and would give this game an entirely entirely new dimension, which would over the years end up in this gigantic war with the entire universe at stake. And all of this was happening in one single game as you were playing through it. To give you an idea of how cool that was, if you were looking at any other game at that time, you would probably have like a really cool story game which you could really get invested into. However, that game would end at a certain point in time. And during that grand finale, what you would have is you would have all the equipment, everything that you'd worked and grinded for to get into this big boss battle. But then the story would always go on, only years later. You would have to wait for the next game to come out, and when this game would come out, you would start from scratch again. You would never have everything that you had saved up in this game. So basically, you were working in one game to then start all over in the other game again. As a player, being able to invest your time and energy into one single game, grinding everything out and then taking all of your skills with you to the next expansion instead of starting from zero again, I mean, that was brilliant. Also, did I mention that live service games are free? Oh yeah, instead of paying $60 for a game you would play once from start to end and would only be relevant for about a year, you could play a game that would have infinite content and it would always remain new and fresh every single year for no money at all. But then how does that work for game studios? How are they going to continue to pay the developers if they're working on a game which will never be done and also never be bought? That's where microtransactions come in. A lot of these games are all about working towards something. Whether that's all about building up towards new characters or new equipment that will make you better in the game, or whether it's about increasing your level to get even better and better rewards as you go on. In traditional games, if you have something to work towards it will generally be a quest where you have to put pieces together to complete something that you will get at the end of the quest. These quests will often be in brand new areas where you encounter new enemies, and that'll be fun to do, where you go from one point to the other and then you put it all together and that's it. However, in live service games, you don't get a brand new area. Generally, it will just be the same game that you have to run over and over and over again for the chance to get something that you may want. And then, when you have all of the pieces together to finally make the character, it may still take you 3 days to finally get it, which, if you don't know, is a long time. So if you don't really feel like doing the same thing over and over and over again until you finally get lucky to get the piece and then wait a couple of days until the thing is done, what you can also do is just go and buy the thing outright. For just a couple of bucks, you can get the entire thing that you want right now at this instant. Also, if you're going to be playing the same game for the next few years, wouldn't it be a good idea to have your character kind of look good and unique? I mean, that's worth paying a couple bucks for, isn't it? After all, you're playing this game pretty much every single day and it's completely free, so might as well toss a couple bucks to the devs to thank them for their efforts. However, over time, these little microtransactions definitely do add up, especially when the microtransactions aren't really all that micro at all. Look at this one being $130, which is twice the price of a normal AAA game. Get enough players to buy that every single day, and instead of getting one big bag of money where you release your one game, basically you're just getting a constant flow of money coming in every single day by having your game out for free. So what we see right now is that live service games are basically games where game studios take one good game and continue on to develop it forever and ever and ever, and players can play that forever and ever and ever, thus invest all of their time and money into this one game, which will be really good, even though this game is completely free, but also makes the game studio more money than their previous paid games. I mean, that sounds like a perfect game, now does it? Indeed, it truly sounds like it. But is it really? Look. It's Pokemon. Have you ever wondered why a game like Pokemon basically has you start off fighting enemies level 1 and then slowly builds them up? I mean, of course not. Like, we all know that if you start out fighting level 100 Pokemon, it will be really, really bad. Likewise, it would be super boring if you would always be fighting level 1 Pokemon when you would be super overpowered. What you find is that basically there's this really fine line of challenge that makes a game really good, where it's not too hard, but it's kind of challenging, and if you work at it, you'll be able to beat it. However, for live service games to make money, they can't really have this perfectly rewarding challenge, because if that were to happen, then basically they don't really have anything for you to buy your way out of. Because of this, a live service game isn't really set up around finding you this perfect build-up of progression, but rather around this idea of finding one fun activity to do over and over again, otherwise called a gameplay loop. This gameplay loop is basically your metaphorical handle of the slot machine that you'll keep on doing and doing and doing until you finally get what you want. Which, quite frankly, just isn't the same as a game where everything that you encounter is new and made to feel rewarding. I'm not saying that the live service model is necessarily bad. I mean, if you really enjoy doing the same thing over and over again, I guess that the gameplay loop is just perfect for you. However, what we can see is that there's a clear difference in game development between making something that's always constantly new and engaging to you versus making something that will be repeated over and over again. So a live service game isn't entirely a traditional game that just keeps on progressing in the same way that a traditional game would from start to end, but rather it's something that sometimes progresses with different updates, but mostly just keeps you running on the same pretty fun treadmill that you can pass by if you pay up. But then why would I want to spend money to skip out on gameplay time? Isn't the entire point of a game to actually spend time playing that game? Well, yes, but actually no. I believe that this right here is the exact point that makes me so split on these live service games. Because when I started playing Warframe and really enjoying it, this was roughly my schedule for the day. I would have to have about 6 to 7 hours of sleep, I would have to spend some hours swimming and studying every day, but I would have about 6 to 8 hours of nothing, free time where I could just game. So if I could find a game in which I could just work towards something and do multiple objectives that would ultimately aid my gameplay in the future, I would carry that over for the many years. And if there would always be something in that game that would kind of keep me on edge, you know, like you can get this thing, you can get that thing, or try and get this thing, maybe you're gonna get this part now, that was just fantastic. It's also why I think these games are so massively popular among streamers, because if you have to think of 8 hours of content to do every single day, it's gonna be quite tough. But if you just fire up your live service game that has a whole bunch of objectives for you to do, and you just go and chase those, you know, you have your goals right there. And you keep on doing the same loop, and all of a sudden you get the thing that you wanted, well, that right there is an epic clip that everyone can get super excited about, and, you know, you have your stream. However, now that I've gotten older, my schedule is no longer just sleep, swim, study, game. My free time is considerably less, so I need to be a lot more efficient with how I schedule in my time. I think a great example of this is if we take a look at my streams, where nowadays I only have about 2 hours each day in which I may be able to stream. So what I'd like to do, instead of just blindly going into a game, is like have a bit of an idea as to what I want to do. Like here in Age of Empires 2, the idea is like, okay, we're gonna try and beat the hard AI today. So I'm gonna start out with a game. The game is roughly gonna last like 30 minutes to 40 minutes. Oh no, you know, I kind of lost right here. This wasn't a really great match. So then we're gonna go recap it to see what went wrong, where did I make the mistake, and then we're gonna try again, and hopefully next time it will go better. This concept right here fits perfectly within 2 hours. It's kind of fun because you have a start, middle, end to it, and also makes for a great 10-minute video. But then when I wanted to do the same thing in a live service game and get one of its characters, it didn't really entirely go to plan. Part of that was a silly mistake I made, which didn't allow me to start the quest. But even if I could start the quest, I would first have to build a separate lab room within my dojo, which takes about 24 hours. Then I would have to research the helmet, chassis, and systems all independently for 24 hours each. But then I only got it researched, so I would have to buy them. Then once I bought them, I only bought the blueprints, so I would have to go and build these from all these parts for 12 hours each. And only then, only once I've done all of that, I could go and build the actual character for 3 days! I can't fit that in a 2-hour stream! And this was something which I genuinely never encountered when I was playing this game like all the time. Because back then, you're just doing a whole bunch of things, whatever pops up. You craft this one part and 2 days later you come back, so oh shoot, you know, that's done, let's go do the other one. You're doing so many different things at the same time that you don't really care about how long things take. But if you're more sparse with your time and you want to focus on one single thing, only then do you really notice like how stretched out things are. But hey, you know, it takes a lot of time, but at least that time investment carries forward, right? Well, let's take a look at games that do require some time and how they historically have carried forward. If we take a look at a game something like chess, this game is old as heck, and it's a game that's been studied a lot. Like people to this day still spend hours studying the game and how all the pieces move, and then how that may make you win or lose certain games. This right here is something that we call the game balance. And one of the things that's been added with live service games is something called balancing. Now I always thought that balancing was just doing like 1 or 2 more tweaks for things that you didn't foresee when you were introducing the piece. Like let's say that you're in the game of chess and you're introducing this new piece called the queen, which can make all the moves that all the other pieces can. But then you see people playing as the queen, and if they move it around as a knight, it is so much stronger than you ever anticipated it would be, that it kind of breaks the game, and this is the only piece that people ever use. Well then, that's not entirely what you intended it to be. So then you say, well, you know, we're going to make one tweak because we didn't really foresee that adding the knight functionality would break the piece so much. So we're not going to make it move around as a knight. It can move like a tower or a rook, and that's just how it's going to be forever and ever. However, if we take a look at the balancing history of one particular piece in a live service game, like this gun right here in Apex Legends, what we find is that first, they reduce the magazine size, Then they increase the magazine size and reduce damage. Then they increase the damage again. Then they reduce the damage again. Then they go up and they increase the damage again. Then they reduce the magazine size again. Then they reduce the magazine size again and they reduce the damage again. And that is just for one single gun where two stats just go up, down, all the freaking time. What this feels like to me is not that they're taking one piece that they thought out very well beforehand, and then when it was put into production, it was like, oh shit, you know, this is not entirely working as intended. Let us change it until it's exactly what we want and then never touching it again. This feels more like they're every season changing things up, because if you change up the pieces on the board and make them do different things every single season, well, you know, whatever worked before doesn't work again, and you're gonna have to spend a lot of hours and a lot of time relearning the game again. Which means that whether you're playing a game for making progression in the game or learning about the game, you're always playing this game that has additional time sinks which make the game longer only for the sake of having the game take longer. But hey, you know, at least if I put in all that time and all that effort, finally, there will come a day where this entire gigantic game will be finished and you can play it from start to end. Or will you be? Making something that's good and engaging is really hard to do, and it's only so long that that thing will stay new and interesting. Just look at all these Marvel movies that we spent the last 10 years watching that all build up to this one giant Avengers Endgame. And after that, how many other movies did you go to? They're still making all these movies like right now, and the story technically continues on. However, there's only so long that this story remains interesting, because to write a good story, you need to have a good start, middle, and end. And if you want to stretch out a good story, what you're gonna get is either a meandering middle where just a whole bunch of things happen, or a very weak end where, you know, something is done, but there's always more. And oh boy, do live service games really suffer from this. Because, you know, every single year they want to hype up the latest update to get everyone to play the game. So, you know, the biggest, most important thing in the universe is happening right now, and we need you to go and save it and join in with all the other players. But also, you know, tune in next year. Because of this, you're kind of in the same situation as all these Marvel movies, where in order to watch the next installment, you have to have watched the first one, so you have to keep up with every single thing that's going on with the game, and not just watch them, but also keep up with the latest meta, keep up with the latest grind, and only then, when you've done all that, you can do the next thing, which you know will never have a great ending, because there is always going to be more. And to add to that patchwork of a story, you also have the live nature of the game, which really doesn't help it at all. Because what you're gonna get is you're gonna have quests that come out, which show you developments with characters, but then the next quest is going to take months to develop. Or in this case, even years. 4 years. And you know what's also happening within those 4 years? Well, canonically important events that are happening with the live service of the game. So what you have right here is this weird rift, where on the one hand, the writers kind of want to keep this story going, where whatever happened 4 years ago kind of seems to the characters like it happened yesterday, but at the same time, the game says, well, in these 4 years, a whole bunch of things happened, so this canonically is 4 years later, but the characters act like it happened yesterday, but the story is kind of written on the fly, with all sorts of patchworks, and there's always going to be more, so this entire mess just becomes such much kind of mess, and man, the gameplay is just one giant gambling loop to get you to spend money, the balance of the game is constantly changing because you always have to relearn it, and then in the end you get this one massive patchwork of a story of always there is more content, which in the end you may not even be able to play from start to finish, because the developer may just decide to wake up one day and think, I'm gonna delete the half of my game, and they will do it and you can't do shit about it. Why would anyone play this? Well, because they're fun. And they're free, and I just want to spend my time playing games. This is where I think the crux of the issue is when it comes to live service games. I think they're really fun games to play when you have a lot of time on your hands and you don't really want to be spending the time and money to search for and buy new games that may fit your needs, and you just want to put on something familiar in the background. Also, I know I've spoken kind of bad about the elements of gameplay, balance, and story, because mostly, all these things are kinda subpar to traditional games which all specialize in some of these areas. However, these games cost money, and how would you even know if you like them? Because of this, I believe that live service games are absolutely perfect for people who are just entering the gaming world. Because for free, you can try out a game that kinda does everything all at once. And then as you grow up and get more money on your hands, you can then decide which kind of games you like to buy. Personally, I've just had such a great time with live service games, but as I got older, I can also kind of see why they're not ready for everyone, and probably also less and less for me. I mean, I would love to check out the Zenless Zone Zeros or the Once Humans that come out every single time, but having to grind hours and hours on something that will reset after the next season, and, you know, there will always be new things, It's just not feasible for me, and because of that, it's not fun to start to get into. Likewise with Warframe, I have absolutely loved that game to bits for years on end. However, if I want to experience more in this world, like different games or just other things in life, I can't just keep on grinding and farming and keeping up with everything that I need to do to stay up in this game. And that's pretty much all I have to say on live service games. I hope that this video has given you some insight as to why people may really love their live service game, and also why people may sometimes feel like it's completely not worth their time and they'd rather like to buy their game. Overall, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you like what I do and you want to support my content, why not check out Overtime, my special show that I do for $1 a month for anyone who supports me via Patreon or YouTube memberships or Twitch subscriptions. For $1 a month, I make extra videos where today we're gonna go out back into Warframe, check out like what the game is like, reminisce a little bit about some of the good stuff, the bad stuff, and the interesting stuff that's happened over the years. Just a little quick walk around and remembering the good old times to go back into, you know, my live service past. Anyway, with that said, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time.